Hello everyone, it's Ashwin Rao. In today's video, I'm bringing you a new brand to my channel, but certainly not a new brand to many of you. I started getting interested in Red Wing footwear just a few months ago when I started diving more deeply into Japanese welted footwear, recognizing that the Japanese have long had a strong interest in Red Wing shoes, maybe even more so than Americans, which is where these shoes are manufactured over in Red Wing, Minnesota. Red Wing is a particularly unique brand because it offers a wide range of makeups in some very distinct leathers created by the SB Foot Tannery, which Red Wing itself owns. And because not all models are uniformly available across the world, it makes certain models much more common, much more popular in the United States, while other models, such as this particular one, are reserved for international markets, and particularly Japan. I became increasingly interested because Japanese enthusiasts of heritage footwear have come to revere almost all things American and Americana, especially in the workwear and heritage wear segments. And they value makeups that are not always available widely in the United States. For example, the Beckman Flatbox model, which is a round toe service boot style makeup with a unstructured toe, has been long considered one of their most cherished makeups, and recently did receive a release in the United States after largely only being available in Japan and essentially reserved for the Japanese market. This is another such model made out of a very similar model as the Beckman Flatbox models that have become so popular, but also popular because of their rarity. This is an even rarer model. And so I am going to start diving slightly more into Red Wings, bringing some attention to their more rare models. Many of you are familiar with the Iron Ranger models and their mock toes with the wedge soles. Those are not really aesthetically my jam. But many of the Red Wing Japan models that I started taking a deeper look into, and I found this model, which is also a flat box model. So the flat box term essentially describes models with a unstructured toe box, meaning that the toe box will eventually start to roll and collapse like many other unstructured toes would. But most Red Wing makeups have structured toes. So this particular model has an unstructured toe, and this is the 1930S Sports Oxford, built using their veritable, unique Klondike leather. This is a leather that is renowned amongst redwear enthusiasts because of its capacity to patina, and it's essentially a T-core leather that will age very uniquely, and it's thick and requires some break-in. It's a legendary leather, and the flat box makeup is a legendary makeup. And because the Beckman has gotten so popular, and that was my first foray into Red Wing footwear, I actually have a pair that I have not yet featured on this channel. I started looking to see if there were other flat box models, and it turns out that this model, which is also described as the Red Wing 8070 model, that's the model number. If you look at the label over here, you will see the 8070 designation at the bottom of that label. A little hard to see, but it's down there. And the 8070 has a compatriot, the 8071, which is in a brown cigar colored leather, I believe. And then there's also the 8076, I believe, model, and the 77 models, which feature more of a booted version of this with a taller shaft. I'm also looking out for a model in that color, the brown color in the boot version, which has speed hooks as well as eyelets. This Sports Oxford is really actually a derby, meaning that it has an open channel lacing system, meaning that it's not an Oxford at all. Red Wing has popularized the Oxford term to describe essentially low-cut shoes that might be a little bit more dressed up, so to speak. But this is a derby, having an open-channeled lacing system, and the Oxford term has been misused by brands such as Red Wing and Viberg, in my opinion, because they apply the term sometimes to derbies in a different way than I think footwear traditionalists would agree with. The features I like, besides the fact that this has this very unique Klondike leather, which, as I mentioned, is a T-core leather. It is not struck through. It is a rather thick leather. If I show you the tongue here, which is also made out of this leather, you can see that there's a fairly thick layer of black, but right immediately underneath it is this brown, non-struck through leather. It's lined on the inside, so it's harder to tell all the way. There's no real rough out aspects there to that side of the leather because of this lined leather. But that means that this leather, once it starts to scuff and age, will have little bits of brown show up, which people really desire in the heritage footwear patina community. This Klondike leather is a thicker leather. It's a workwear style leather, and it will have a unique break-in. I think one of the reasons why the Japanese cherish these makeups is because of the forms of patina, as well as the way these leathers age and crease very gently. I think the Japanese really appreciate the process of aging patina and caring for their shoes over a lengthy period of time that grows character. And when you have a pair that has the flatbox, meaning the toe will collapse, that has a leather that will patina, that has tonal eyelets and stitching with this brown colored eyelet that sort of goes with the brown laces. This Klondike leather almost has, in certain lights, a brownish look to it. And these darker soles, which are not characteristics of the American USA available Red Wing models, a lot of these grow cord lug soles are more specific to the Japanese Red Wing market and sometimes available through the European Red Wing distributors such as Red Wing Amsterdam. But this grow cord King B sole provides both traction as well as a little bit of heft. This particular model, as I mentioned, is 270-degree Goodyear welted with a contrast natural stitching on the upper. It's got the welt and an insole, but it really has no midsole. After that, it's really just the outsole to which this footbed is mounted. There are members of the Red Wing community who, once the soles wear out, will replace these with a midsole and then a fresh resole while preserving the quality of the uppers. So we'll see if I take it on that journey. The makeup here, as I mentioned, is pretty rare. You can only really get this in Japan or through Red Wing Amsterdam, and these were released back in 2017, 2018, and had a very limited release. Now, for those of you who don't know, Red Wing had a major cyber attack around the COVID pandemic. When it kicked off, Red Wing was hit with a pretty heavy cyber attack and essentially lost a lot of the data and patterns that they had for these ranges of models. And so I'm not sure if this is a model that can actually ever be reproduced by Red Wing because they don't have the templates anymore to make these leather cuts. At least that's my understanding. They had to choose and pick which models they would save for posterity, and the Beckman was one of those that they saved because it was so popular in the Japanese market. This model, to my understanding, was not made in large quantities, though it has a really cool look. This is built on their number 8 last, which is their last that is popular amongst the Beckman. It has a slight bump toe. It's a relatively round-toed last with a slight bit of asymmetry to it. This is a last for which I recommend people typically take a size down from their sneaker size, essentially a half size down from their typical Brannock size. For most people, if you have a standard volume foot, if you decide to wear these with dress shoes, you could probably go down a full size from Brannock. If you wear thicker or medium thickness socks, I would recommend probably going a half size down if you were able to find this. So I'm a Brannock 10. This is a size 9.5. Many of the Red Wing makeups have adequate toe box space, regardless of what size within full size Brannock within their measurement scheme. You can get a fair bit of spacing within the toes. Where you should really look is how grippy the waist of these shoes are, as well as how much heel slip you have. If you have a fair bit of heel slip, generally the recommendation is to size down so that the waist grabs your foot a little bit better and the heels thus slip less. I found that with medium thickness socks, my heel really does not slip. The open channel lacing system of this derby shoe, even though it's called this 1930s Sports Oxford, will allow you to cinch it down so that the waist secures your arch a little bit better. And this instep here does provide a fair bit of arch. This is actually a fairly grippy shoe. I do suspect that because this leather is a little bit thicker, there will be a few hot spots that eventually develop because of how this shoe rolls, but I'm hoping that those break down over time. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But this is a really handsome pair. The thing that really attracted me to this particular model was this apron. Look at how clean that stitch work done. I'm guessing this was done by machine stitched apron. This is not a hand sewn apron from what I can tell, but it has a really cool, clean pattern. This is all one piece of leather, so this leather is raised up and then the stitching is created in 2 layers to create this aproned effect, which I really like. And I love the fact that this has the flat box, which will cause the toe to collapse over time, and the wedge sort of heel block here. I think this is called a trooper heel. I like that as well on this Vibram Growcord King Bee sole, and it provides quite a bit of traction without being overly hefty. And because it has a more narrow profile, it's a model that I think will dress up pretty nicely despite its rugged heritage style roots. 1930 Sport Oxford model 8070. If you want this in brown, look it for the 8071 model, and then the 8076 model is the brown version in boot form. All of those are flat box models, meaning that these toes will collapse. I figured I'd put this video out even though the shoe doesn't really have a production anymore. Maybe at some point in the future it will again if Red Wing can dig up the pattern. But I just thought it was one that there was scarcity of information on the internet, despite people like CJ Cook and others who talk a lot about Red Wing. They don't seem to talk a lot about this model. There are a few Reddit posts out there talking about this model and sizing, but because it shares its last with the Beckman Flatbox, because it has that number 8 last, because it has this Klondike leather and the collapsing toe, and it comes with a really rare makeup, making it more desirable, and it has this really handsome apron. All of those things I thought were quite cool and well worthy a feature. So I'm going to slip my shoe trees back in here. I'm going to give these a slow burn, and I'm going to put these on in the near future. I will say that another thing I really like about this leather before I turn off this video and let you go about your day is this matte look. So I'm gonna have to decide how I condition this, if I'm gonna condition it rather lightly so it keeps that matte look to it, or if I'm gonna eventually give in and give it a little bit more of a shine over time. We'll see, but for now I'm gonna wear it, see how it starts to age, and enjoy it on its own journey. I was lucky to get this in very little wear condition, although there was some wear, but hey, I'm happy with what I'm getting here. I'll soon be featuring the flat box Beckman model, which, as I mentioned, is far more information available about that model because it's been used quite widely amongst footwear enthusiasts and fits the aesthetic of many other enthusiasts, being that service boot style makeup. But this guy is super cool, worth a gander for those of you into heritage style. Red Wing Flat Box 8070 Sport Oxford, really a derby, 1930s Sports Oxford. Hope you're all doing well. Have a good one, and we'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.